All right, we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the Bay Ragni Show. We are here Monday afternoon, day after Easter, and I'm here with the one and only Mr. Jeff Scott Soto. Jeff, how you doing today, man?
Well, it's clear why we don't have cameras on. It's nobody wants to see what's going on the day after Easter with us.
I mean, you act like you were here with me last night having a few cocktails.
But in a lot of ways, I was there. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. You know what's like so many things like pop up when you start doing like research for these interviews, and one of the things which I don't know how I never realized this was I didn't realize when you got started with Ingve, you were only 18 years old.
Yes, sir.
That's I mean, and then I think to myself, I mean, you guys were literally two kids joined forces, ready to take on the world. Like that had like were you thinking that to yourself? Like, who's going to let us two kids like rock and roll for them? Like, you know what I mean? How are they going to let us in their business? We're two kids.
But not really. When we're teenagers, we know everything. By the time we're 15, 16, we're telling our parents what to do. We're telling them where to put it. We know everything. By the time we get to 18 and 19, you're kidding me? We're ready to conquer the world. So in our brains, it's like, what took you so long? We're 19 and we're barely getting started now. It's kind of funny. When you're in your 50s, you look back and go, oh my God, how the hell did anybody give these kids a chance for anything? It makes more sense when you're older. You reflect on it that way. When you're doing it, I was like, geez, I'm almost 19 and we're doing the marching out record. I'm a bit late to the game. That's kind of how my brain was processing it then.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Like I remember like, 18, 19 and still thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to play in clubs?
Right. No, I remember some of the places I played with Ingve. There were 21 and older clubs. I wasn't even old enough to be there, much less be on, a singer in a proper band like that at that point. But to be honest with you, it really freaks me out when I think of even our drummer Anders was 22 at that. My stepson is 22 now, and I think the oldest one in the band was 22 when we were on the road doing that first Rising Force tour, and it's trip,
Yeah.
And it's even when I look at things like the old video shows, like the nostalgic video shows they show on MTV, for instance, the only time you actually see music videos. And then you see how young everybody was, and you go, you know what? It does make sense. This is how it's supposed to happen. We're doing music for our contemporaries for that time. Now we're older, and our fans that followed us through the years are older with us. We're not breaking new ground with new demographic of young people. The younger groups are doing that, and we're basically we're making sure that we fill that that expectation from the older fans.
Right.
You see you see like a current day Gavin Rossdale or Bush, and you compare it to what he looked like when they first came out. It's like, oh my God, he looked like an embryo when they first started. and it makes sense now when you think about that in terms of where and when we started.
Yeah. You know what's crazy too? Like I've been thinking about this a lot. As I go back, you're listening to music, whether it's from, even like I've been listening to like a lot of like Frank Sinatra and stuff anywhere the last few years, but any genre of music that I listen to, and you think to yourself, I mean, even take like Kiss. We'll say Kiss,
Okay.
and you think when they first came on the scene, they make those first 3-4 iconic albums, and they're like early 20s, and you're thinking to yourself, and the same goes for you guys. Like you with Ingve, you're 18, 19 years old. You're making like this iconic music that now 30, 40, 50 years later for some artists, and you think to yourself, they were so young. And even if they were in their 20s, let's face it, like you said, you're still kids.
Right.
But you're making this music that just speaks on so many different volumes and levels 30, 40, 50 years later. It's mind blowing to me now as I sit and listen to these things.
I think that's the biggest mind blow of it all, when you think that you are creating music that is now considered classic or nostalgic or something that was a sign of the times. And then
Right.
think about yourself now, 30 some odd years later, with all that experience and wisdom, still churning out new music. Like, we're basically talking because I have a new record out, but
Right.
then you're realizing this album's not going to break any new ground. This album's not going to get radio airplay. This album's not going to do any of the things that we were striving for in the beginnings of our careers. But you would think it would be even more of a chance, more of a reason to have all those extra additions and successes, is because we now have the wisdom, because we now have the experience. And it's really sad to think that we had more of a chance to kind of make and break our stuff when we were younger and we were less
Yeah.
experienced. It's really a trip when you think about it in those terms.
It is. It really is. It's I just sit here at times and I just shake my head. I'm just like, wow, it is really mind blowing.
Eclectic, unbelievable record, and just every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears of the past 40 years onto a record, and nobody will care compared to the album I did, within the first year of my professional career. It's unbelievable.
So all right, so let me ask you that then, like, because you've been a part of what, it's over 60 albums you've been involved in.
Yeah, I think that number is actually exaggerated in terms of it's too low. I've absolutely done. It's got to be at least 100 by now. But that's if you include all the sessions, if you include all the non-released albums, because when you do a collection of songs with one artist or one project, that would be considered an album in terms of the amount of songs that you're doing.
Right.
And so many of them that will never see the light of day, never seen the light of day, or disbanded before we even got to master the damn thing. So when you add all the sessions, all the things I've appeared on, all the projects, all the things that didn't surmise into what we're talking about in terms of the actual release things, it's got to be well over 100 at this point. I think in total, it's got to be over 600 albums that my voice is on or are on. Because when you think of backing vocals, when you think of appearances, as I said, sessions, all of those things, you culminate all that together. There's about over 600 songs. One album would have anywhere from 9 to 12 songs. So if you multiply that by even 100 records or 100 releases, that's almost 1,000 in itself. So it's amazing. The amount of songs that I'm on. I'm shocked that I can remember any of this shit.
So let me ask you this then, like you were just saying though, like you have the new album Complicated, which comes out in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and you've been involved with all these, different songs and albums throughout your career. But like you said, people still want to know more about the first album you were involved with than the album now. Like, how does it, as an artist, how do you get motivated to want to keep making albums then?
Well, part of it is because there are people that do care about new music. And I think the majority of my creativity and my interest and my hunger that still exists in making new music is the fact that I didn't have the household name success of the Metallicas or the Journeys or the Van Halens. Those guys got to hit their stride. They got to hit their mark. They got to hit a certain pinnacle of success that even if they never released another new note ever in their careers, they could ride into the sunset with an amazing career, an amazing legacy of music. Mm-hmm. Where myself, I've done so many things that never hit that mark. It's not that necessarily that I'm still trying to reach for that brass ring, but it's internally, I still haven't met my creative, my creative peak. I still feel there are things that I haven't done that I still want to do that I haven't tried or that I haven't added to the things that I've already done. There's so many different flavors and mixes and soups and all those different things that I haven't done yet. And because I haven't had that pinnacle of success that basically says, you know what, just stop here. There's no end to it. There's no stopping. There's that interest of trying to do something I haven't done yet. And maybe it'll cross over, even though it's a pipe dream and a half to think at this level, at this age, anything's going to really cross over. But it's really just about my own personal inside. I want to do it because it just feels right.
Wow. And hey, you're still, that's the thing too. It's not like you're putting stuff out there that's like, he just phoned it in. I mean, you're right. Still making amazing quality, beautiful music.
Thank you. And that to me is the end game. That's the only thing that matters is because the minute people saying, yeah, you know what, give it up. You're not saying anything new. You're not doing anything new. It's just the homogenized, recycled everything you've already done. That's when there is nothing else to say. That's when it does become just kind of grabbing the pennies that you can along the way. And I
Right.
still feel that there's something in me musically and creatively. And to be honest with you, and I say this all the time, especially during the whole pandemic, I needed music as a therapy. I needed that escape.
Mm.
Needed to throw myself into creating just to keep myself from going crazy and be bored stiff. There were a lot of people that took advantage of it and said, oh, I finally got a year off to do nothing and literally just eat bonbons and watch Netflix. Not in the studio every single day, creating, churning, and I was thrown into the fire with so many different things that I normally wouldn't have had time to do or even interest to do. And it
Wow.
was a great time for me in terms of getting me through that time.
Hmm. Well, let me ask you about this. You mentioned the word therapy, and music is like
Sure.
therapy for everybody.
A lot of people.
And it seems like, and you went through a situation where with Journey, where you were fired, and it seemed like it came out in the press earlier this year that it was something that bothered you all these years
Right.
because you never knew why, and you just wanted that closure. And you ended up getting the closure. Neil Sean put a thing out or responded to a comment and gave that reason. Did that give you the closure? Did you feel better afterwards?
Not really. It wasn't really so much closure as it was. It was more of you're still talking about this dude, and I wasn't really talking about it. I was answering a question in an interview. I gave an honest reply in an interview based on what the question was about, and it turned into a whole Jeff is just looking for attention. Jeff is just looking for press. It was none of the above. To be honest with
Right.
you, I've had closure with this in my personal closure for a long time in terms of not to expect any further reasonings, any other explanations. But it's of course naturally I wanted to be able to be friends with the people that I worked with or that I no longer work with. I don't
Right.
want enemies in the world. So it was more of it along those terms that I was even talking about it, is that I was extending that olive branch of wanting to make sure that before I leave this earth, I leave with everybody knowing that I'm a good person, that I was a genuine person, that my best interests were only in being good with these people, not necessarily what I could get from them or what they can get from me, etc. And
Right.
I always say, especially even somebody like Ingve Malmsteen, who it's not new news that there's a division between us. There's a wall between us, and I'm trying to break down any of these walls because I want to leave this planet with absolute peace and harmony with everybody that I've known and everybody I've worked with. And that's the
Hmm.
bottom line. It's if you had a bad breakup with a girlfriend or a girlfriend had a bad breakup with you or boyfriend, whatever the situation is, and you kind of feel like you want to be able to hug it out and have closure. Not you don't have to be friends afterwards, but I just
Sure.
want the civility part to stand up more than the animosity part. And that to me is more important than anything. And that's all the majority of what I was talking about when I was replying to that question. And this was last year that this interview happened. I don't know how it resurfaced later and ended up as a blabbermouth headline, like clickbait kind of thing. And it wasn't even a recent interview. So for it to come out later and it made it look like I was bringing it up this year, it was actually last year that I did this interview. And
Wow.
it turned into something that I didn't ask for. I didn't expect it to be that. So to be honest with you, as I said, I am absolutely at peace with the whole Journey situation. I went to go see them recently. I I wrote up how exciting it was, how it was emotional to be there and watch it as opposed to be up on stage doing it with them after 15 years. But how happy I was for everybody. It worked out for everybody in question here. It worked out for Arnell, it worked out for them, and it even worked out for me because I ended up doing a lot more things in my life and my career that I wouldn't have done had I been just with that band.
Right. Did you take like that um I'll say afterwards that situation and going back to the therapy part of did you use that situation and write about that situation as like a therapeutic thing and make more music out of that, do you think?
This is what I do for a living. I write everything I write about is everything that I'm dealing with and going through in my own life. Even if it's inadvertent, you don't see the actual lyrics or the actual theme about a song is it's not as obvious, but everything I write about, especially because I do write a lot in double entendre, you could think that something is about a relationship between a boy, a girl, or like a romantic relationship
Hmm.
or the demise of one, but it could actually be linked to something else that happened in my life. So yeah, I absolutely use that therapeutic side of what I do for a living to be able to get through certain situations because that's your best way. It's kind of like writing a diary or writing poetry. You put those feelings, you put those emotions down in the context of a song, and you kind of get over it that way a little easier and a little better than just bottling up inside and living with it for so many years.
Right. And then I did see like you had put up that you went to see Journey, and I thought, and I said to myself, I said, that's really super cool too, because you're not only you have a little history with the band, but you're seeing Jeff, you showing yourself still as a fan of music and supporting,
Right.
you know, and I thought that was really super cool.
And this is all I ever wanted from the situation after I was let go. That's all I cared about. I wanted to be able to hug it out, shake hands, and say, guys, it was great. It was a pleasure. It was an absolute honor to do what I did. And I hope you leave a couple tickets for me to come see you next year with your new guy. That I wanted to leave in that way, the same way I would want to leave, like a relationship. If you're hugging it out and saying best of luck, invite me to your wedding if you meet the person that you were supposed to be with. It's the
Right.
same kind of situation for me. I try to do that ideal in every walk of life, that I just want to be able to walk away and part a situation under great terms as opposed to a wall or division between us.
So will you try to knock the wall down with Ingve?
I've been trying for years, and at this point, I don't know if there's going to be any resolution there. If anything, it seems to be going more backwards in terms of, yeah, I did the duets release, and we did a video for one of the songs, and there was the Ingve song, "Don't Let It End."
Mm,
Um, I didn't mean any ill will or malice behind it. I wasn't saying my version's better, newer, it's more improved. None of the above. But it was kind of treated that way when it was actually pulled from YouTube and all the channels. It basically was another kind of dagger saying, just walk away from my career and leave my career alone. It's like, excuse me, but that's my career as well. So I'm not going to. That's part of my history. That's part of my life. And I
sure.
didn't just sing it. I wasn't just programmed to do this and do that. I was a part of the creation of that. So I'm not going to let that go as something that was somebody else's. I'm going to share in that for the rest of my life, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. So that leads us to the new album, which is titled "Complicated," and it sounds like it could be almost Ingve inspired.
Well, the funny thing is, again, I love the double entendre of everything that seems to be linked into my life. I don't like the clickbait stuff that ends up on the blabbermouths of the world. But it was during the interviews of the Duets album when it was the end of one of the conversations where the journalist said, if I had to go to somebody who does not know anything about Jeff Scott Soto, doesn't know anything about your voice, your career, nothing, and I wanted to introduce them to your music, what would be the best way to describe you in terms of as an artist? Like, do I say he's a rock singer? Do I say he's a ballads guy, an AOR guy, whatever? And the only reply that came to me immediately was like, well, it's complicated. My
Hmm.
career and everything that I'm about as an artist is complicated because I'm not just a one trick pony. I grew up as a student of a band like Queen, where they were laying it all out. They did everything and anything they wanted to do that was an influence in their lives, and they got away with it. I want to be that kind of artist. I want to be able to do rock, jazz, funk, disco, blues, classical, opera. I want to be able to tap into all those different worlds because those different musical worlds inspire me. And so, say that I'm just a kind of a one trick pony artist with the blinders on, I'm a little more complicated than that, and I love the way that resonated in terms of describing me as an artist, and that's why I wanted to name this album "Complicated."
That's amazing. It's so true though too, and even I think that's the one uh, beautiful thing about the music business today is an artist, you know, can do that now. They can just make any type of music they want and just truly write from the heart and express themselves the way they want, and not be that one trick pony that you have to stick to that you know.
Exactly. That's the one, I think the one, people are always talking about the negatives of streaming and physical albums kind of going away, going bye-bye. The one positive that came from the MP3 and the, all your music is now just it's a file. It's not even something you hold and feel and touch anymore. The ideal of the iPod is where it kind of opened, it just closed down all those barriers. The fact that you can now travel with thousands and thousands of songs in a little device, or another device that streams tens of thousands of songs, you now have the opportunity to tap into all these different things, as opposed to, well, I'm a metal artist and my CD magazine can only hold 12 CDs, so I'm only going to bring my metal CDs. Now you can bring everything from Metallica to ABBA, and nobody's going to judge you for it. And that's what it's turned into. The artist is basically turned into that, just the same.
Yeah, it's it is still mind blowing too, like you say. Like I can't believe I could have my phone and not even use it as a phone, but it's my listening device
Yeah,
and
the
everything
phone
else.
is the secondary purpose of the actual phone itself. It's secondary compared to what everything else you're doing with it.
It's crazy. It is so crazy. So let me
Yeah,
ask you this: so one of the singles you put out 2 weeks ago,
yeah.
"Last to Know," features the band Spectra, which actually it seems like you produce them and you're like helping behind the scenes with these guys. Is this something too you want to do in your career now? Is help other artists or?
I've been doing this since the beginning of my career. To be honest with you, I would say the late '80s where I started actually getting into producing and collaborating with others and kind of helping them along with their. I actually even mid '80s when you think about, I joined Ingve, and I was at the same time of right as I was trying to plant my own seeds as an artist. I was helping a high school buddy of mine who had a band called Panther. It had
Hmm.
no singer. I helped them finish their songs, and I recorded with them just so they could use my voice as their demo would be the demo to find singers and to audition singers. As they were going along, they couldn't find anybody that was strong enough to cover the material, so they asked me if I would be fine with them releasing it, because they would have a better chance of really hitting a lot of other singers, a lot of territories, by releasing the EP. And that's the only reason I said yes. And here we are 30 some odd years later, and I'm still, so Jeff, your band Panther. I'm like, no, that was never my band. That was just it as writing, the process of helping them complete it. It was never my band. It was never intended to be my band. And so, yeah, I started this process of helping others very early on in my career.
Hmm.
And Spectra is it's no different. I've been trying to help BJ, who's the singer of Spectra, get his voice heard around the world for years. But I never, whatever he was working on wasn't the right vehicle to take the frontiers, until I finally hunkered down with Alessandro. I said, dude, let's write a couple songs that BJ's voice is basically going to sell this. Let's not try to get BJ signed, or BJ's band, whatever he's doing currently, signed based on what he's doing. Let's do it for him. Let's write the songs. Let's produce them. And with
Wow.
2 songs, we got them the deal, and we made the record together. It was such a joy to finally get this guy heard around the world, because he's been part of my core, my camp, for the past 20 years. BJ has, and now
Wow.
finally the world can see him as the singer, the amazing singer that he is, as opposed to just the background singer slash guitar player slash keyboard player of my bands.
That's cool. Look at that. You're spreading the love to
Absolutely.
everybody.
Me,
That's
it's
the
all
way to
about,
do it.
yeah, it's all about paying it forward, man, because in the end, you can only go so far with your own things and your own ideals, but when you're paying it forward to others, you truly get that extra spreading it out there and showing the world what else you got that's not necessarily yours.
It's awesome. So you have released, like what we said, "Last to Know" was the latest
Yeah,
video and single. Before that was Love Is the Revolution.
correct.
Will you be doing any more videos for the album, or?
We are editing one right now that's going to be coming out on the day that the album drops next month. So yeah, there'll be a third one.
Cool, 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 cool. It's such a it's the one beside the music that is actually released. The beautiful thing I love about Frontiers Records and what they do is they push that whole music video thing still, and it's a beautiful thing. It adds so much to the music.
Absolutely. And even though they're not being played on like MTV or any of the music channels, YouTube is the new MTV, and it is another promotional tool to get your stuff out there. So I really try to put as much effort because these budgets for these videos are we're nickel and diming them, but I have a
Mhm.
lot of great friends around the world that are willing to give me that extra push, that extra nudge, so it doesn't look as low as the budgets were given to make them. And I put that little extra effort just to I think it's important.
Absolutely. So we did an interview. I guess it was about a year and a half ago. It was right after the passing of Eddie Van Halen. I remember that.
Yeah,
But one of the things that we talked about in that interview that you had brought up actually was that you really didn't think you were going to be doing touring anymore because you just didn't think it was drawing as much for you, and you thought you were just going to be more studio. But yet I'm seeing you're touring all over the place. So I was like, did your opinion on that change? You're
not
getting
at
these
all.
shows.
Not at all. I'm doing right now. What I was talking about initially was that I'm not going to be doing tours just for the sake of touring. I would
Okay.
normally do it. I would release an album, and it was expected that I would go to tour to promote it. Now I'm only touring or doing shows where there's a demand for it. And right now, every single show I'm out doing, everything that I've been booked for, it's all based on demand, supply and demand. That I'm not touring for complicated because there's no demand for it. There's no real call for me to go out there in a bigger way than for me to try to book a tour and try to get a bus and try to get an opening band that's going to buy on. All of those things are the efforts that I don't want to do anymore. I want to only do things that are based on, hey, dude, there's a venue here that really wants you and they're willing to give you X amount, and you're gonna have about 3 or 4 thousand people. That is gonna interest me more than, hey Jeff, well, you put an album out. I think it's time to go out and lose your ass financially and play in front of 80 people. That's not gonna happen anymore.
Right. Right. I love it. Now, actually, you were just out doing some acoustic shows
Yeah.
uh, with Jason Bueller from
Yeah.
Saigon Kick. Were you doing like any of your stuff off of this new album on there, or just?
No, for the most part, we're not doing anything new. We're basically just doing our own acoustic singer-songwriter renditions of stuff that people already know. And this show is more comedy based. It's more like the songs are actually becoming secondary. We could do a 2 hour show acoustically, and there's not a single bored person in the house. It's just laugh. It's a riot of laughter the entire time, and the songs truly are just kind of like the little things that we do in between the comedy and the humor, and that's why it's working so well.
That's cool. You guys got to get over here to Nashville and do that, man.
We're trying. We're trying to open this up all over the country, so that's why we continue to do them. We're expanding our brand, and we're getting better at what we're doing with this, and it's starting to really open up. So I think we're going to be doing this for a long time to come.
That's awesome. That's good news. Cool, cool. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for this and taking the time out and
Hey,
having
thank
a.
you for having the interest to do it. I appreciate your time. It's just the same.
Oh, thank you. And so, where's the best place everybody should go to get complicated and stay up to date with all of your upcoming shows and the demand that people are demanding?
It used to be my website, but to be honest with you, I mean, all my socials are now linked to my website because you get all my updates and everything in real time, as opposed to waiting for somebody to throw it on there or hey Jeff, you got anything going on that I can put on the website? So my socials, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, if it's got a blue badge, and it says Jeff Scott Soto, then you know it's official. You know it's me. Follow those, and you'll get all the updates and all the appearances and everything that's going on of where to buy the records, where to stream them, all that stuff.
Cool, cool. Well, Jeff, thanks again, man. And yeah, I hope to see you and Jason popping into Nashville at some point.
I sure hope so. All the best to you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, man. Take care.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.